who have joined us for today, and greeting to all stakeholders of the Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs, and greetings to members of the committee. I think it is just after 6. We're starting with our meeting. The agenda of our meeting, it is as it has circulated to all of you members, but just for record purposes, item number 1 will be opening remarks. Item number 2 will be a briefing by the Commission. Item number 3, we're going to have discussions. I will explain what kind of a discussion we're going to have. Item number 4, when we go to the other items after the IEC, we will indeed request the IEC and the minister and the team to excuse the committee, because we'll start to be dealing with what we call housekeeping issues of the committee that relates to other issues. It will be consideration of the letter from the president that determined the salaries of the IEC commissioners. And then the other item will be consideration and adoption of the oversight report to GPW. And after that, we'll deal with the minutes. From there, we'll close the meeting. I think that's how the meeting is going to run today. We have invited the IEC members to come and have a session with us, a session which I take it's a notes sharing or information sharing session between the Committee of Parliament and the IEC. We have also invited the minister, because the minister... Can you mute that? Can you mute so that I don't hear the children? I was saying we've invited the minister because the minister, administratively, the IEC administratively received its allocation from the Department of Home Affairs. But a lot of work done by the IEC, it's work that must be corroborated with the work done by the Department of Home Affairs. So that's why we from time to time invite the minister and the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs. We are quite conscious of the fact that the IEC is a Chapter 9 institution. In terms of the content of its work, it is categorized as a Chapter 9 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So we're quite very clear about how we interface with Home Affairs and how we interface with being a Chapter 9 institution as the IEC. So we've invited the IEC on a process that our expectation is just that they will do a helicopter view of the issues of the norms and standards that may be taking place in our nearby countries with regard to the Constitutional Court judgment implications. We are fully aware that the IEC, it is indeed the Chapter 9, and it is not coming to the committee to present options of which system to follow or not to follow, because that role, it is properly a role of both Parliament and the Executive. When we will be discussing which option to follow, which one must be taken, which one is ideal, we will be taking that presentation from the Executive, because that duty is given to the executive. Why the executive? It is also because that the financial implications that relates to what the court judgment needs us to do will have to be indeed confirmed and researched by the executive in terms of how we move. So the reason why we have called IEC today is just to equip members of the committee, because if there was no lockdown, we could easily take a study tour to Botswana and just check what is happening there, what are the systems. But now that we are unable to do so, IEC, other than being a Chapter 9 institution, it's an international body. It is affiliated to deal with, so they know what is happening in the nearby SADC, in the continent, and in the world. So they are here just to share with the committee. As a result, after they have presented, we are going to take a discussion with members, but we will not be asking them questions. We will not be posing questions to them. We'll be just discussing, because they're just giving the information to us, and information that we may use in the future when we'll be entering into a fierce debate on the policy options, which obviously will have to be sponsored by the executive, and Parliament will then deal with that appropriately. So whatever the presentation is going to be today, after the presentation, we'll just take a discussion of members without them having to respond, because it is not in their position to can make options for Parliament. It is Parliament, after engaging with the executive, who will want to keep the IEC and its responsibility as the Chapter 9 institution in that regard. Whatever presentation that is here, I don't want it to be used today or in the future, or to be viewed as an overreach by the IEC for coming to share with us. And we want to thank them again, members, that they have availed themselves to, at a technical level, assist Parliament in terms of coming up with the legislation that will be in the interest of the people of this country, that will be a long-lasting solution for the electoral processes of this country. And I think our relationship with them includes, but not limited to, exactly what I have just said. So as we will be dealing with this matter, members, it's quite a big discussion. I'm fully aware, because the electoral system that South Africa chose in 1994 was considerate of a number of factors. Part of those factors was obviously including, but not limited to, building a non-racial, non-sexist, a democratic, and a united and a prosperous South Africa. So that was part of the guidance that our forebears who were leading at that time in Parliament were guided by. But obviously, we're 26 years down the line, everything is maturing. Even this thing that we call trias politica. You know, trias politica, members, is it defines the arms of state, that we have the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. And the trias politica principles requires that these three arms of state must work independently and interdependently, have respect and regard for one another in executing the mandates given by the people of this country. So everything is maturing. We're 26 years down the line. That is why we have this kind of a judgment before us. This judgment and its implication needs the political parties that are in South Africa to have a conversation with and amongst each other. Civil society groupings will have to do the same. But at the end, we'll have to lead a situation where Parliament leads a conversation to our people, a constructive conversation which begins to explain what this judgment is about and how do we take it forward and what will be in the best interest of the people of this country. So it's quite an involved process, and it will need a maximum unity amongst members of the committee. When we deal with this matter, we will not have to look into party political background. We'll have to really apply our minds as members, because whatever we're going to do in this process will have a long-lasting solution, a long-lasting implication for the people of this country for many, many years to come. So that is why in dealing with this process, we've got to make sure that we deal with a lot of research. We invite as many organizations as possible just to present to us as to what are the policy options that are there, so that when we start to discuss this matter as members, we are able to be rich in our minds and in our vocab to be able to engage. But as you know, issues that relate to IEC needs a lot of science. Whatever, when we talk about IEC and on IEC related, everything there is scientific because it involves calculations and so on and so forth. So we've got to be at that level ourselves as members to engage with this matter in a manner that will benefit almost everyone. I think with those words, I would like to take an apology. I have an apology from Honorable Lizelle, who said he was to join us at 6:30. Any other apology?
Chairperson.
I Chair.
Yes,
I did not receive any apology. I think Ms. van der Merwe, I think I just saw her now. She just joined now.
Yes, I'm here, Chairperson. Thank you, Eddie.
Okay.
Chairperson.
Honorable Makluva, you are recognized now.
My apologies. Our colleague Angel Cornelia is challenges. She's sitting in the car because of no electricity. I think it's just wise just to register that, should she not be online further on.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Makluva. So those are the apologies. I take it. I already withdraw the one of Honorable van der Merwe because she has joined before 6:30. We accept the apology of Honorable Kanyile that she will be attending from the car because of those challenges. Other than that, we don't have any other apology. Can we now take this opportunity to give to the IEC to deal with what we have requested them to deal with? After that, I will just give the minister to have 1 or 2 words, and then before I go to members, Mr. Chairperson of the Commission, over to you.
Chairperson, if you can ask him to unmute.
Can you unmute?
Thank you. My apologies. Thank you.
Start afresh.
Thank you, Chairperson of the Home Affairs Portfolio Committee, Honorable Advocate Bongo. the Honorable Minister of Home Affairs, Dr. Mutsoaledi, the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs, Mshazi, Mr. Nzuza, honorable members of the committee, fellow commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Electoral Commission of South Africa, please permit me to express our warm greetings to the honorable members of the Portfolio Committee. And before we continue with the presentation to the committee, allow me to introduce the members of the Commission present with us in this virtual meeting. We are joined by the following fellow commissioners: the Vice Chairperson, Ms. Love, the Commissioner, Dr. Masuku, and Commissioner Judge Dr. Pillay, and Commissioner Mr. Muyepa. Along with us also we have the contingent of our administration team led by our Chief Electoral Officer, Mr. Mamabolo, accompanied by the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Operations, Mr. Shiburi, together with the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer of Corporate Services, Ms. Henning, as well as the Deputy Chief Electoral Officer for Outreach, Mr. Mosri, and they are also joined by the Chief Officer for Political Party Funding, Mr. Mahlangu, and the Administrative Support Officer, the Commission Services, Mr. Kilembe. Honorable Chair and honorable members, let me join in confirming that in approaching today's briefing, the Commission had an opportunity to engage with the Honorable Chair, Advocate Bongo, in order just for us to clarify and delineate the roles between the legislature and the role of the Commission in this journey that we have embarked on, and of the process to remedy the defects in the Electoral Act, as was found by our highest court in the land, that is our Constitutional Court. In those engagements with the Chair, we reach an understanding, as is already outlined, that clearly delineates that Parliament is the one that is to make policy decisions as well as the policy options together with the executive. And the role then of the Commission is to provide the educational, technical support without any overreaching on its mandate as a constitutional institution. And this, we agreed, it is in line with our understanding of the Constitution and the principles of separation of powers, and which is why the Constitutional Court correctly referred the review of the legislation to Parliament. And as such, then what we as the Commission can do is really in this presentation, I confirm, as the Chair pointed out, we are sharing some information on the most common electoral systems in use around the world, in our region and beyond, without necessarily also saying these options, these scenarios are actually exhaustive, but this will just help the committee and the honorable members to better understand and to embellish their understanding of what systems are at work. Chairperson, one would further like just to underscore what you already pointed out again, that the Commission is deeply mindful of the electoral systems adopted, those systems adopted by a country that is a matter of significant national interest and which have a far-reaching implication for the constitutional democracy. And this is what, for this reason, the Commission believes that the parliamentary process that we have embarked on to review and to reflect as a country on the electoral system would be, as you pointed out, a broad-based, highly inclusive, and ideally emerge a process that will emerge from a national consultative and consensus, drawing on inputs from all interested stakeholders, including the political parties, our civil society, our traditional institutions, the business community, the labor organs and structures, various government spheres with interest in this process, as well as, most importantly, the electorate and the public at large. And further, Chair, the Commission is of the view that no one electoral system is actually perfect. That is, no one size fits all. And it's for all the countries. But there are going to be choices that will have to be made, and also there'll be lessons to be learned along the journey from the regional experiences, as the chair has already pointed out, as well as the international experiences, while drawing on our own country's experience. And in that process, in reflecting on these various electoral systems in use around the world today, we would have to balance as a country the elements and the characteristics of these systems against our own constitutional principles and our unique socio, political, economic, historical, cultural and other conditions that make the landscape of our own country. We also know that there already are different perceptions and views that are held regarding the various systems, whether we are a presidential or we are moving to a presidential system or we remain in the Westminster system. These are all various types of systems that will be shared with yourselves so that we can broaden and improve the general understanding of what is the task that is before us as a country and as it is led by the portfolio committee in our parliament. In conclusion, Honorable Chair and members, the Commission wishes to reiterate its offer, as already confirmed by the Chair, that we continue to stand available to support the parliamentary initiative by placing at its disposal any technical assistance that may be required. And in this regard, Honorable Chair, there's key things that the Commission anticipates that Parliament will make a pronouncement around those issues, because some of them had already been alluded in the previous discussions and engagement with the committee. So we note that these things Parliament would be minded to give a firm direction. Among them is that to develop a precise time frame for parliamentary review process. If we recall, Honorable Chair, that I think it was Honorable Janji, who in the last engagement was very much succinct in articulating this particular aspect. And then the other thing is for Parliament, for the committee to ascertain the resources required, including the precise technical resource persons from a variety of subject matter experts, including from the Commission itself, to be invited to provide support to this parliamentary process. The Commission on its own is not sufficient. We may be probably more specialized in terms of electoral systems, but you may need other resources, including political scientists and so on and so forth, legal teams to deal with the issues that are ahead of us. You also may be minded to invite the public submissions so that there is a broad, inclusive process. So the possible submission of those public submissions on the issue before us would actually enhance the process that we envisage coming ahead. And from there, that then the committee would then be in a position to come up with possible a short list of the electoral systems around which the discussions should continue to narrow the engagement. And in the same vein, we envisage that you may be minded also to invite inputs from members of the public, and as well as the same time to conduct public hearings using different platforms if the physical option is not available, similar to what you call the virtual scenarios like we are engaging now, to continue to galvanize inputs from the members of our society, and eventually then to draw up recommendations for consideration and debate through our parliamentary process, and eventually to be able to pass amended provisions for the Electoral Act and the Constitution and the other legislations that may be necessary. So, Chairperson and Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, and members of the portfolio, allow me to invite our CEO to then unpack the various scenarios that we just wanted to share with you regarding the process that is ahead. And I wish to thank you for allowing us, me to indulge the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. CEO. Mr. Mamabolo.
Oh, sorry, I had forgotten to unmute.
Yeah, start from the scratch.
Okay. Now I was really saying I want to align myself with the salutations that have been made here, acknowledging yourself, Chair, and members of the Portfolio Committee, the Minister, the Deputy Minister, Commissioners, and colleagues and members of the public who are part of this process. You know, as the chairperson said, we are not coming and presenting policy options. We are rather presenting the different families of electoral systems in the world without necessarily going into a suitability discussion of these respective systems. So the scope of the presentation really is to look at a world representation of electoral systems, and then we'll look at the tabular presentation of same. We'll then look at the constitutional principles and the values that must underpin an electoral system. Now, let's start with the definition. Roughly, an electoral system is really methods or rules for counting votes to determine the outcome of an election. Or put differently, it is a set of rules and procedures for the translation of votes into representation in a representative assembly, be it parliament, a local council, whatever. So it is an electoral system, it's a set of rules and procedures for the translation of valid votes into representation in a representative body. Often, we find that electoral systems are codified in the constitutions or electoral statutes. So there is no hard and fast rule as to whether they has to be in a constitution or in an electoral statute. Like our chairperson indicated, electoral systems never reach a point of perfection. They are perfect at the point in history, but as society evolves, there's a need then to refine them to respond to new challenges that may emerge in a particular political context. They reflect the political history of the country and what problems that country is seeking to address by the manner in which it translates vote into representation. And on the other hand, electoral systems are a reflection of the democratic evolution of a society. As society evolves and the democratic majority takes root, so does the need to reflect, to revise and refine an electoral system. So it's closely linked to a political history of a people as well as its democratic evolution. Now, throughout the world, there are two main families of electoral systems. There are electoral systems that are proportional and electoral systems that are pluralistic or majoritarian. Or if you want to use a different nomenclature for that, you could say there are single winner systems or multi-winner or multi-member systems. The multi-winner, multi-member systems are often very proportional, and the single winner systems are pluralistic or majoritarian. Now, pluralistic and majoritarian don't necessarily mean the same thing. A pluralistic electoral system is, to give you an example, it could be in a ward and the candidate with the most votes wins. He may win by a factor of 35% or 38% of the vote, but they are the candidate with the most votes, and therefore they win. That's pluralistic. Majoritarian systems, largely, the winner has to win by the majority, absolute majority, which largely is a 50+1 type situation. Now, the single winner systems are by definition winner take all, whereas multi-winner systems may be proportional or winner take all. Now, between these two broad families of systems, there has emerged mixed systems which borrow some elements of single winner systems and some elements of multi-winner systems and fuse them into a coherent system. So there are mixed systems which borrow components of each of these systems and put it into a coherent whole. Sometimes it makes sense to elect just one person in instances where there is just a single position available. However, when electing a legislative body, there's a real decision to make between using single winner system or multi-winner systems. And I think the Concord decision has catapulted South Africa into that point where a policy decision now has to be made between using single winner system or multi-winner system. A choice of an electoral system has profound consequences for any society. The choice of an electoral system has profound consequences for any democracy. For the fact that the electoral system has implications about access to be a representative. It also speaks to the representation of historically disadvantaged sectors in society. It also speaks about the political culture that is fostered by the use of one or the other system. So the choice does have profound political implications for any society. Now, what are the characteristics of multi-winner systems? In other words, what are the characteristics of proportional systems? They tend to work in larger and more populous electoral bases, extending over a big geographic expanse. And this multi-winner system, the proportional systems, they encourage contestation by multiple parties and candidates. So they foster greater participation of candidates and political parties. And a resultant legislature from a multi-winner system tends to proportionally reflect the voters' political preferences. So proportional systems, in a sense, they avoid political domination because they offer every political voice representation in the Legislative Assembly. Therefore, they reinforce multi-party democracy much more than single majority systems. So these multi-winner systems, the proportional systems, they seem to reinforce multi-party democracy better than does single winner systems. They also facilitate the election of historically disadvantaged groups in society. Now, if we move then to the characteristics of single winner systems, they tend to work in smaller electoral bases where there's a closer link between the elected representative and his or her constituency. They also are prevalent, or rather they facilitate the possibilities of uncontested districts or constituencies, whatever geographic basis of election is in use in a particular situation. They tend to be dominated by two-party systems. Now, what are two-party systems? An example, in the US, there's a dominant two-party system there between the Democrats and the Republicans. If you go further in Europe, in the UK, the Conservatives and the Labour Party. So the single winner systems tend to produce dominant two-party systems within democracies. And these single winner systems lack proportionality between votes cast across the country for a party and seats won by the party. The vote cast for a party don't have a relationship with the seats that that party has won. So there is no proportional nexus between votes, the number of votes cast for a party, as well as the seats that that party will get. And this single party system tend to encourage governance by single party majorities, and tend to facilitate the election of fewer representatives from historically disadvantaged sectors of society. Now, having gone through the characteristics, what are the common types of single winner systems? I'm not listing them, all of them exclusively. You know, this is some examples, but it's not a totality of. The first of these types of single winner systems are plurality, a plural electoral system in which the candidate with the most votes wins without necessarily attaining a majority of votes. For as long we are contesting in a ward, I garner 38%, the next person garners 35%, and the next 15%. The one with the most votes wins, even if they have not attained a majority of votes. And then there are two-round electoral systems where a system identical to the plural system, except that if no winner attains the majority in the election, a second runoff is held. So we see that a lot on the African continent, especially in Francophone Africa, where for the election of the president in particular, you have to attain a majority. In other words, you have to attain 50+1. If in an election no one garners 50% plus one, then everybody is eliminated and the first two candidates go for a runoff. So that is another example of a two-round electoral system. Now, this is a little complicated one. Is the single winner ranked choice voting. And this, it allows a voter to rank candidates on the ballot in order of preference. And a voter who receives over 50% of the first preference of votes will be declared elected. However, if that does not occur, the ballot count continues a series of runoffs. In other words, candidates with the least votes are eliminated and votes are transferred. Second preferences are transferred to the other candidates. So if I'm Sai Mamabolo, I'm given a ballot, I'll be able to say on the ballot, my first preference is A, second preference is B, third preference is C. If my preferred candidate does not win and is eliminated, then they give my second preference in the second runoff. So that's really how it works. A very complicated system. Now, there are now going to the different types of multi-winner systems. There are block systems, a block voting system where electors have as many votes as there are candidates to be elected, and counting is then identical to the plurality system, with the candidates with the most votes winning the seat. But again, the voters in this case have as many votes as there are candidates on the ballot. And then a single voting system, it's a multi-winner system in which electors have one vote for a group of candidates. And the candidates then with the most votes get elected. Now, what we have all have come to be accustomed with is the least proportional voting systems. This is what has been used so far in South Africa. It's a multi-winner system in which political parties nominate candidates and electors vote for their preferred party. And the seats are allocated to each party in proportion to the share of the national vote received. So what we've been using is a multi-winner system. It's a type of a multi-winner system. Now, if you compare the proportional systems and the winner-takes-all systems, a choice has to be made whether voters, or rather whether the system must be a winner-take-all. In other words, there is no reward for those parties or candidates who come second with a significant number of votes, because the first person who gets elected, he takes all. There is no compensation for people who may get second position or third position. Now, in proportional representation, groups of winners are allocated in alignment with the proportion of votes they receive. And there's an example there, which I won't get into. But essentially, the principle in proportional representation is that groups of winners are allocated seats in proportion to the votes they received. Whereas, as I indicated, the winner takes all, by contrast, operates on the principle that candidates with the most votes wins. This means that some candidates get representation, others not. So it's just as simple as that. Then again, there's cumulative voting. It's a method of election in which voters have a number of votes equal to the number of seats to be elected. So if there are 200 seats in the National Assembly, in this cumulative system, the voter will also have 200 100 options, really, to use during the election. So this will make, in practice, the ballot paper to be very complicated. Now, some different types of proportional systems are the ranked choice voting in a multi-winner district. It's similar to the one that I've presented before, where it's a voting system in which voters have one vote, but are able to rank them in order of preference. I've already spoken to that. Now, we've spoken about the proportional systems. We've also spoken about the single winner systems, whether they be plural or they be majoritarian in their construction. And I did indicate at the beginning of the presentation that there are jurisdictions that have opted for mixed systems, which borrows on some elements of multi-winner systems and some elements of single winner systems, and put them together, fuse them together to give a coherent electoral system. And many consider them to be having the best of both worlds because they maintain the link between constituencies on the one hand and representatives in single winner constituencies while embracing the benefit of proportionality. There are two main types of mixed systems. Is the mixed member proportional system and a parallel system. Now, I've highlighted this because the mixed member proportional system, because is one that has been in use, that is in use within the local government sphere in South Africa. It's an electoral system in which each voter gets 2 votes, one for a candidate in a constituency and another for a party. A fraction of seats are elected using plurality, and the remainder of seats are allocated from a list, a party list proportional component. So the important thing in mixed member proportional systems is that they are not two independent systems. The ward component and the PR component are not independent of each other. They are mixed in the sense that the votes that a party receives within the ward component is taken account in the determination of the overall proportionality. So there's a compensation. If a party loses a ward, those votes are not lost. They'll be taken account in the calculation of the overall proportionality of the outcome. So these are not two distinct systems working at the same time. They are actually fused. Whereas in parallel systems, you or rather, this is a system in which each voter gets 2 votes, one for the candidate in a ward and another for a party. The fraction of seats are allocated as elected using simple plural system and the remainder from the least proportional system. But there is no compensation between the two systems in parallel system. So the legislature, therefore, that arises from an election is not necessarily plural. It's not necessarily proportional. So in parallel systems are not overall proportional, whereas mixed member systems are overall proportional. because of the compensation that happens. Now, this is a tabular presentation of it's a tabular summary of the things that I've been talking about. You'll see that the winner-takes-all and single winner systems are really less proportional. They don't give you any sense of proportionality. So single winner systems are inherently winner-takes-all, and they bear no resemblance to proportionality. Whereas, on the other hand, the multi-winner systems are by definition proportional. And then in the middle, you have a combination. You could have a mixed member proportional or parallel systems. Now, this map, it's a depiction of electoral systems in the world. The red, I'm sorry we don't have a legend there, we should have. The red is countries that use single winner systems. And the purple, the dark purple, because there are two variations of purple there. The dark purple is countries that use mixed systems. And the light purple are exclusive proportional systems. So you'll see that South Africa is using a mixed proportional system, as does most countries in Latin America, and the former Soviet Union, those new democracies of the former in Eastern Europe largely are using a proportional representation system, and Australia is almost clearly a single winner systems there, and a significant portion of countries in Northern America. So you can see that in the Americas, in fact, there's a bipolarity there, because the southern part of the Americas, it's proportional systems, and the northern part, it's single winner systems. So this is really the landscape throughout the world. Now, that's really the different types of systems that you find in the world. Just to recap, there are two broad families of systems. On the one hand is single winner systems, which are essentially winner takes all. On the other hand, you have proportional systems which facilitate the election of multiple number of people from the same grouping, be it a political party and so on. These multi-winner systems tend to promote the inclusion of historically disadvantaged people. They promote multipartism, and they create legislative assemblies that have a plurality of political opinion. And then we also said that there are mixed systems, where elements of the single winner systems and elements of the multi-winner systems are fused in to achieve some coherent electoral system. And those really are the two broad families of systems you find throughout the world. Now, you can, in mixed systems, you can match whichever elements you wish to, depending on the political issues that a particular country is trying to resolve. So this said, Chairperson, We just included some reminder of what are the constitutional principles at play in the South African context. And by this, we're just outlining the reasoning of the court. We garner these principles from the Constitution itself, as well as the interpretation that is given by the Constitutional Court. And here are the principles and the as argued, or rather as clarified in the judgment of Judge Mahlanga in the New Nation matter. Firstly, that the political rights which are conferred under Section 19 of our Constitution must be read together. So Section 19.1, Section 19.2, and Section 19.3, those rights, all of must be read together. In particular, Section 19.3b, which says every citizen, every adult citizen has a right to stand for office and, if elected, to hold office. It says it's part of a closely related right that the Constitution deliberately groups together as political rights. They are so interconnected that they must be read together. So that whole Section 19 must not be individualized in reading. They have to be read together to create a comprehensive oneness of an idea. The proper understanding of the rights conferred under Section 19 must start with the appreciation that Section 19.1 confers on citizens the freedom to make political choices, and which includes the choice to join or not to join a political party. So Section 19.1 in itself allows for citizens to make political choices, which includes whether to join or form a political party or not to do that. Thirdly, to appreciate the full extent of the rights conferred in Section 19.3b, it has to be read together with the right to freedom of association under Section 19 of the Constitution. So Judge Mahlanga says, it seems to me that in the context of this matter, the freedom of association challenge is inextricably linked to what the content of Section 19.3b right really is. So in order to give full effect to the content of Section 19.3b right, one has to read it in the light of the right to freedom of association under Section 19. So again, this brings a connection between Section 18 and Section 19 of the Constitution. 4, the court gave an explication of Section 18 to mean both the right to form association and a corresponding negative right not to associate. So if you have a right to associate, you have an equivalent right, a negative right not to associate. So in interpreting 19, therefore, one has to take into account both the positive element of the right as well as its negative element. Fifthly, reading of Section 19.3b to limit the exercise of the right to stand for political office, having to do that through a political party, will result in the infringement of other rights in the bill. And 2 rights were mentioned, really. It's Section 18, which speaks about the right to freedom of association, as well as Section 10, which deals with the right to dignity. So the judge says, if people are forced to make their political choices via the mechanism of political parties, the right of self-consciousness is being undermined, and therefore their right to dignity is impaired. So the court's interpretation gives primacy to the Bill of Rights in the definition of the scope and extent of the political rights that are protected under Section 19. And therefore, this limits the choices that Parliament can make under Section 106 and 105. You will remember that Section 46 and 105 give Parliament the statutory constitutional duty to come up with an electoral system that results in general in proportional representation. But according to this judgment, Parliament must do so mindful of the rights enshrined in the Bill of Rights. So in number 9, in relation to Section 46 and 105, the focus of the sections is not on the result. Whoever the participants may be, the system, in other words, the electoral system that Parliament eventually adopts, must be one that results in general in proportional representation, and that proportionality does not equal exclusive party proportional representation. Now, just in conclusion, Chairperson of the committee, just to remind ourselves, because the electoral task team that was led by Mr. Van Zyl-Slabbert, they left us a legacy of 4 values that they think must underpin an electoral system. Firstly, they said fairness, which they said implies that every eligible voter should have the opportunity to vote, and that vote should be of equal value. And this is very important in the South African context, given our political history, that each vote should be of equal value. Secondly, simplicity demands that the electoral scheme has to be accessible practically to every voter, easy to understand and easy to participate in. One can add that even the electoral system that Parliament eventually adopts must be such that it's easily understandable by an average South African. Thirdly, it deals with the issue is the value of inclusiveness, which implies that every attempt should be made to allow the widest possible degree of participation by various and diverse political preferences in the representative legislatures. So the notion of affording every voice an opportunity to be heard in a legislative assembly, it's important. So it's not just about multipartisan, it's about creating a broad plural view, having to bring it to bear in the national policy-making process of Parliament. Lastly, is accountability. We now know that this issue has occupied public discourse and has tended to, that public discourse has tended to place accountability as the only matter that ought to be considered in the determination of an electoral system. It is important. There is no doubt about that accountability is important. But really, one has got to look at other elements, values as well, inclusivity, equality, and simplicity. And that, accountability is not an exclusive function of an electoral system. Of course, the electoral system can contribute to the creation of a accountable political culture. But at the end of the day, it is the political culture of a society itself that will determine the extent to which there is accountability. Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, CEO, and thank you, Chairperson. I'm going to take members in the following order. Number 1, Ross. Number 2, McCluver. Number 3, Lekhwase. Number 4, Honorable Mudize. Number 5, Honorable Veteran Likota. Number 6, Honorable Van der Merwe. Number 7, Honorable Tito. Number 8, Honorable Kuwala. Number 9, Honorable Chabane. Number 10, Honorable Janji. Number 10, Honorable Mulekwa. In that order, members. You are reminded that it's a brainstorming session. We're not going to be asking IEC specific questions because when the chairperson closes, he will not be responding to exactly. So what you may have to put in is your views, your comments, because we're going to get into a very tedious process on this subject matter. And can we start with you, Honorable Ross?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the IEC. Chair, I think a very important point is raised right at the end in terms of the values and whether or not we agree with these values that were set out by the Van Zyl-Slabbert Commission, because these values will guide all the decisions we make in terms of how we come across an electoral system. And so I think it's quite important for us up front to look at these values and assess if we agree with them, if they're comprehensive enough, if there's anything that needs to be added. And I also agree, in terms of the accountability aspect. There's been a lot of debate on this in the past. Can an electoral system itself create that accountability? So there's the element of the electoral system, which gives you the best chance of at least making MPs as accountable as possible to a constituency, but also considering, how does the parliamentary system work in terms of accountability to constituencies. And I think the other important point as well is if you look at the Van Zyl-Slabbert report, they mentioned that they were rushed, and their rushed time period was about a 2.5-year time period just to come up with that report. And it's something for us to bear in mind as well. I think there's a lot of talk about changing the electoral system completely. And we need to bear in mind that there's 2 aspects to this. So the one is the judgment of the court, which we have 2 years to implement. And that is really how do we get individuals into the national and provincial elections, not the local government elections. So that is one aspect that already requires a lot of consideration, not only in terms of the Electoral Act and how it's amended, but also things like the political party funding and how those acts are changed. And so, as we said in I think it was 2 or 3 meetings ago, that we really need urgent input in terms of what other legislation is also affected by bringing individuals in to the system. And then secondly, there's the overall system. So we can decide that in one bite we're going to try and chew off changing the entire electoral system, or we can decide that we're going to, develop a policy for that and get inputs on that, but that the short-term objective is to comply with the court judgment. So I'm going to give other people an opportunity to say more, but those are my opening inputs.
Thank you, Honorable McCluver.
Thank you, Chair. Am I audible?
That's correct.
Thank you so much. I really want to say thank you to the IEC for the presentation. I must also further note that it was really informative. What really catch the ear was the words being used, the notion of political parties to be heard. Having said that the Constitution make provision for public involvement in lawmaking. Now, currently, we do have representation, which I believe, that political parties currently will play a pivotal role in assisting Parliament to a decision on a particular model. And maybe, Chair, I would like you to put it to the committee, and that we as a committee seriously consider to invite political parties to the portfolio committee to come and present, either come and present personally, verbally, or in writing their submissions. That will really also help for Parliament to take an informative decision in all of this. So I would argue that political parties, including interested organizations, their submissions will most, vastly reflect the voters' choice out there. I also would like to say that it will be upon political parties to get their act in order, should we consider to call them in to come and make their representation because we are running out of time, and I'm afraid that time is against us. The other thing on benchmarking, we are aware due to COVID-19 on traveling. I would perhaps ask the IEC to consider a virtual kind of a benchmarking or a virtual tour, because my concern is the information shared of other countries. We are privy to that information. I would like the IEC also to play a role in communicating that information to various stakeholders in order for them, political parties and or organizations, to make informative decisions. Then along with this, Chairperson, I know that the IEC have given an indication from now onwards as far as registration is concerned. I maybe would also ask and request that we as a portfolio committee make a call, a clarion call to the IEC to perhaps come out very much strongly on registration, because I know that in the previous meetings, Mr. Machini has mentioned electronic registration. Perhaps if we can come out strongly on that, even now onwards for by-election, as far as the registration for the people out there is concerned. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Honorable Lekwase.
Thank you.
Can you unmute?
Hello.
Yes.
I would like to start by thanking the chairperson. And am I audible enough, Chair?
That's correct. Proceed. We seem to have lost Ms. Lekwase. Honorable Modisa. Honorable Modisa. Honorable Likota. Honorable Likota, unmute.
Chairperson, can you hear me?
That is correct.
Thank you very much, sir. I add my voice to the gratitude of others to the presentation of the IEC. It is quite clear that we need more time to deal with this presentation. And I would like to suggest that Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee must consider how can we make accessible all of this information to as many people as is possible, not just the Committee of Home Affairs, so that when Parliament itself sits to address these issues, at the very minimum, those who are in Parliament have got as much access to this information and have reflected on this. I don't know whether the IEC has considered how to make this as accessible as all that. But then there's a large number of people, very large number of people who are not members of Parliament, who are citizens, responsible citizens, people critical in influencing decisions that affect the nation. And I honestly do think that we must give ourselves some opportunity to ensure that there's as many as possible of those people who can have access to this information, who can exercise their mind on this information, and to the extent humanely possible, can influence their impact on dealing with this matter. And I have no answer as I'm sitting here, but I think we should reflect on that and make it possible that we can expand accessibility of this information to many citizens of our country. I thank you for the moment.
Thank you, Veteran Lekota. Honorable Lizelle.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. I think I've been largely covered by my colleagues before, but also just to say that we thank the IEC for their presentation. It was definitely very informative. I think I would agree that, of course, this is a very mammoth task and a very important issue that we are dealing with, Chairperson, and that we should be able to share, firstly, this presentation with our political parties, and then, as the Honourable Maglua had also indicated, that we should ask political parties to also, and other stakeholders, of course, to express a view on how they think we should remedy what the Constitutional Court had indicated to be a shortcoming in our electoral system. I think if one goes back to the Frederick van Zyl-Slabbert report, I mean, it's very important that it indicates that no electoral system can guarantee accountability, but that we should ensure that, of course, we make improvements. And one of the suggestions, of course, that the majority held in that report was the mixed proportional system, in which they suggested that some candidates be elected to the National Assembly or to provincial legislatures directly, whereas the party list system would remain. And I think, in my view, the IFP, for example, my political party, and I mean, you said we're speaking as a committee, so we're not speaking from political lines, but we have, for example, gone back to the Van Zyl-Slabbert report, which we are currently reassessing. We're looking at the Constitutional Court ruling as well, and we will be putting together some of our suggestions, Chairperson, on how we think the system or how we should go ahead in addressing some of these challenges that the Constitutional Court had flagged. But I think for now, Chairperson, the report by the IEC is for noting. I think it's important, they gave us a lot of information to digest and, of course, to share with our constituencies and our political parties. And I think the task then for us as individual members of this committee, but also as political parties, would be to come back with what we see as being the most perfect solution to indeed ensure fairness, inclusiveness, simplicity, and accountability, Chairperson. And I will leave it there for now.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chair. Honorable Tito. Unmute, Honorable Tito. I'll pass in the interest of time. Honorable Muela.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Once again, Chair, let me observe the protocol, starting from yourself, Advocate Bongo, the chairperson of the committee, the leadership of the IEC, led by the chairperson, Dr. Mashinini, Dr. Mtswaledi, Minister and the Deputy Minister, and all members present here today. Well, Chair, I think let's appreciate the report, Dr. Mashinini and the team. It's a very informative presentation to all of us as members of this portfolio committee, so that we can have an inner understanding on what is happening and what we intend to do or implement as IEC and the country. What is important, Chair, as it was presented here, I think I want to also join the chorus to say we note the report, and when necessarily we are going to contribute accordingly. But what is important is that, as Honorable Ross earlier on indicated on the issue of accountability, which I think is very much important, Honorable Chair, that as we join hands in gloves and working together, what is important is that as political parties from our different angles, we need to make sure that there is an accountability on this issue, so that at the end of the day, we don't point fingers to one another, and we work as a collective, as members of this portfolio committee. That's what I can say for now, Honorable Chair, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Honorable Chabane.
Chairperson, greetings to colleagues. Chair, I also want to join colleagues in acknowledging, noting the presentation as outlined also with the benchmarks that have been referred. Chair, I also want to join and suggest that because that is the national policy matter, we may need also to get a sight from the executive in terms of the process that they've established. And I think it would be important, Chairperson, that we communicate a time frame on how this process is going to be unfolding, in particular to the executive, so that they're able to come back and outline policy options within the status quo in line with our country. Noting the benchmark that has been presented by the IEC, it will be quite important. And I think now that the minister is here, the committee may need to establish that time frame, because we've been given 24 months, and that 24 months is no longer, it will be quick to lapse. So we think we must be able to have that time frame as a committee. It will be quite important, Chairperson, that as our colleagues are indicating, that we ought to have involved communities and civil society to engage on this process. And once the executive has outlined a process in terms of how we must move, it will be then an opportunity for all of us and the political parties to interface with the process. So I'll suggest the Chairperson that we may need to give the executive, at least the Chairperson, early August to come back to the committee to outline the policy option. And if they had to draw back the IEC, it would be important, given their previous commitment to assist this process to move forward. Once more, Chair, as indicated, that we members of Parliament, we must commit to this process, Chair, that we ought to move faster in terms of engagement in order to resolve this matter, so that Parliament interact with this process to its finality. I'll pause there, Chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mkini.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Now, I'm not going to be long. We like to note the report as well. And I thought maybe, Chair, in terms of that report, maybe the IEC will actually, give us a bit of a bite in terms of this type of electoral system. How are they happening? For example, are they going to, section into block votes, or you're gonna have some constituents that you have to do? You know what I mean? It would have been nice in terms of these systems that are happening everywhere in the world. Like, how are they actually finding their main functionality? Because I think at the end it is the how part that some of us are actually thinking about in terms of how maybe these things are you going to go about it here in South Africa? Because I think that also, Chair, is that maybe we're not too far off, because I mean, in the local level, this thing of having an independent, we do have it. This type of a system is there. Now, maybe, it would have been nice now, science, clearly, how would you include this thing in a South African scenario, But like we do take note of the report from the IEC, and ourselves will study it. It will enrich us in terms of understanding different types. Maybe maybe how would you divide this thing into some constituency? How this thing is going to happen, And also, there are things that, when a person dies, what do you do, in all of those kind of actually stuff. So, but anyway, thanks for actually that. It's actually quite enriching. It's very interesting also in terms of the parts of the world, the type of the system that they're using. It will be very nice to correlate on the type of economic development, like how this country has developed in terms of using different, the system itself, looking at America, looking at China, looking at all those kind of, so it would be very nice to link that in terms of economic development. That is actually a study for another time. No, thank you very much, Chair. We do take note of the report. We'll actually study it. We will definitely also on our side, we're making our own research. We'll make a submission into the committee that will be established in terms of the. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ganji.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, Chairman Bongo. Let me also join the colleagues in appreciating, firstly, your leadership as our Chair, to appreciate the leadership of Chairperson Mashinini and his team, led by the CEO. I think this is really a lot of food for thought for us. I'm inspired, Chair, by two things that you have said up front, that before we even listen to the presentation, you have charged us to approach this as South Africans and not as party this and party that. And now I understand why you made that point after listening to the presentation. But you have also made the point about us treating this as information sharing that we need to absorb. I really appreciate that. Thirdly, I want to appreciate this presentation by the IEC. I think it's helpful in many ways. One critical area where it is very helpful, the IEC is making this presentation because this presentation is helping us because they are putting forward a menu, an available menu of systems across the globe. They say, here is a menu. It's like you're in this restaurant, you want to order food. So here is the menu of systems across the world. Of course, without going into too much of a detail into that. What I appreciate, Chair, was I want to suggest a few things that you as our chairperson of this committee, you must lead us on. I think the first thing of those things that I want you to lead us on, which I want to make as a suggestion, that the approach of the IEC to share with us information, it helps us in one critical thing, that as this committee, today we must take a decision that says we want to insulate the IEC from being a referee and a player. Well, they've given us this information because this is one of our most endowed assets, the IEC, with your SARS and so on. And you don't want, and they've been very careful in the way they've presented this, which I very much appreciate. You don't want them to be, unlike what my Honorable Mgrini is saying, I wouldn't want us to go deeper into saying to IEC, then tell us how do we deal with this. I'm saying let's insulate them from this because they are going to play a role as this institution. So it's going to be important that we do that. And one of the things that we must remember that today, 25 years later, we have a South African experience of voting in a democracy. When the framers of this constitution that we have met and crafted this, they would have had global experiences. They did not have a South African democratic voting experience. We have that today. And therefore it's an important issue. And it helps us to then say, how do we use this experience of practice that they did not, that our framers, which I appreciate the kind of role they played, that they did not have when they did that. And so for me, Chair, I would want us to take, and hence I'm coming to you for you to lead us in this process. I want us to take today's step, today's presentation a step further, in line with your call of us doing this as South Africans, that what we have got today, let us agree, led not by the IEC this time, led by the committee, by yourself, that let's have what I would suggest as a symposium where we delve into detail, not just a 2-hour meeting as we're doing now. A symposium, it could be a day where we deal with this, because in such a symposium, colleagues have spoken about the Francaise Labat issue. It could be brought into that kind of a workshop, but we could invite into such a symposium even those framers that were there before, so that they can share with us. One of the critical questions that the CEO raised, that, for example, they can share with us why in 25 years ago did you not choose a winner take all? They will tell you that based on the principle of what we wanted to achieve as a country, the country that says it belongs to everybody else, winner takes all would not have helped us with nation building. That's one of the things that they will tell us, that we couldn't go that kind of a route. So I'm suggesting that in that symposium, through you, Chairperson, and you can invite parties to say, who do you think can be part of this panel of people that we want to invite? Those crafters, those electoral practitioners, we have them in South Africa. Today, some of them are in the academy, that we can bring them in to be part of that. We can bring in global players to get this global experience in this kind of a symposium, which will take a day or two where we deal with this particular issue. And at that point, it could assist that post that symposium, parties can then begin to do what colleagues are asking that they do today. This is really what I want to suggest, Chairperson, that we do. And when we do that, it actually reinforces, Chair, our integrated roadmap. Because today's step is supposed to be part of that roadmap. And therefore, because today is also helping to further define that integrated roadmap that we're talking about. And what is very clear today, Chair, is that even though we've been given 2 years by the Constitutional Court, the process that we can start defining is saying to us, fixing that deficit in that electoral system suggests that we might need an ample time, as colleagues are saying. So I really wanted to make that kind of suggestion, Chair, that, and this time led by the portfolio committee, which brings all other parties, IEC can participate in that process. I am of the view that we must insulate our own institution, because you don't want, when we choose a particular scenario, then one party accuses IEC because you have presented this and therefore you have pushed us in this line. I really wanted to make those few points, Chair, but in a way to say, because the Fansale Slabat is not the only signpost we have in this country. So Fansale Slabat's work must be seen in the context of other contributions that we want to bring in. You have a new generation today that appreciate the journey of this country. That generation has got its own views and ideas. So you're not going just to put Fansale Slabat in a briefcase. So every 30 years it's Fansale Slabat. I pause there, Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Can I take Deputy Minister? DM?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair.
Who's disrupting? Continue to do. Who's disrupting? What is that? What is that process about? Eddie, can you assist me to check what is that protest about? Proceed, GM.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Just 3 points to make. I think that the committee, we must be very much aware that we have been given time frames to work on. And as such, whatever we do, we need to be able to move with speed. Obviously, it's not going to be the contribution of the executive only. And that is the part I want to come at in terms of saying the IEC is not responsible for drafting laws, but it is us from the side of Parliament who are responsible for drafting laws. And as such, we can observe from them the best international practices. And then we have a responsibility ourselves to move quickly and make sure that we incorporate all views moving forward. And lastly, Chair, I think in this critical time, one of the things that will help us pull through is for us not to be rushing to pointing fingers at each other or anything like that, but to work together as a collective towards making sure that what we craft becomes a legacy for generations to come. That is all, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, Dr. Zwalidi.
Thank you very much. Chairperson, let me join honorable members who appreciated this input by the IEC. Needless to say, it has been valuable. It opens our minds every day. What is starting to surprise me is that when it comes to the presentation about the Constitutional Court judgment, it looks like every day I listen to it, I learn something new, which has been said before, but I learn it afresh. So this emphasizes the fact that we cannot stop learning in this situation. So I will agree, firstly, with Honorable Lekota, that we need more time for this type of presentation, which was supported by Honorable Janji, who proposed a sort of a whole day or even 2 days workshop. I think that's very, very important for us to understand where we are heading to. I'm saying so, Chairperson, because I don't want us to view the Constitutional Court judgment just as an instruction to amend certain weaknesses in the Constitution. Excuse me. Yeah, in legal terms, they usually say you are curing a mischief what mischief do you want to cure? I don't want us to just be curing something that might have been seen as a mischief in our electoral legislation. I want us to take this as an opportunity to come up with a clear new electoral system in South Africa. As Honorable Janji has said, we came up with an electoral system and even a constitution about elections that was informed by what was happening elsewhere in the world. And I think that statement is very important to me. We did it based on what we thought was good because it's happening elsewhere in the world. Now, for the past 26 years, it has happened here and we've seen what is that which we need. And so for that reason, we'll make change. I am aware that out there, society believe members of parliament or political parties are scared because we are introducing independence. That political parties are scared because they might be wiped off because of independence. I don't hold that view, that we should be fearful and say this change is going to bring independence. I'm sure you are aware, those philosophers who lived before us, especially a philosopher called Heraclitus, said the only constant in life is change, meaning change is the only thing that is unchanging. So we must expect that there ought to be change all the time. So, Chairperson, I will say, let's accept or let's finalize this meeting by saying we need that workshop to bring many other experts. And when we do so, we must not even think the constitution itself cannot be looked at. And I'm not talking about changing the constitution so that there are no independence. No. Ever since this judgment came to the fore, we've seen areas of the constitution that need to be re-looked at in terms of all these electoral principles. If we don't do so, Chairperson, I can assure you, from what I've already seen, we are going to be in court almost every month, if not every week. I'm not exaggerating, because people have now seen all these things that need to be changed in our electoral system and our constitutional principles dealing with elections. They've already seen that we'll be rushing to court every day. So in order to avoid that, Parliament must see and cover all the corners. I'm saying so, Chairperson, because, you know, even before the ink would dry on the Constitutional Court judgment, we already received papers, both the Department of Home Affairs and the IEC. We are already receiving papers of people who are threatening to go to court, asking another aspect of the elections to change. And when you look at those papers, they were actually informed by this Constitutional Court judgment. People are already learning that, oh, even me, I can go. Oh, even me, I can go. So actually, the party that threatened us with that gave us 14 days to make the change. It's a very big change, which we can't make alone, which needs the whole country. So we wrote to them and said, no. You can't give us so little time. We need to consult everybody. All political parties need to get involved in this. But they were already threatening to go to court because they were informed by this Constitutional Court judgment that everything that is in our electoral system can actually be challenged, is up for a challenge. So we have got this opportunity to make sure that we are not going to live with challenges almost every day. We take this opportunity to change everything that needs to be changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I can give you the chairperson of the IEC for parting shots. I want to step off the item. Mr. Machining.
Thank you, Chairperson. In the interest of time, I think as the Commission, we thank the chair, the portfolio committee members for having invited us to make this contribution in the journey that our country has embarked on regarding the review of our electoral systems. And as we've indicated earlier on, we note all the various comments that have been made by the different members, and we thank you all for the warm reception of our presentation, but more than anything else, the context in which it is understood and it has been taken. And thank you, Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, for also joining us in terms of where we are. And we share with you that these matters now need to be expedited accordingly, especially with our constitutional determined timeframes. And we reiterate that we stand behind the committee to continue to provide all the necessary technical support that would be required. Just as a parting remark, I am reminded that the choices that are before our country, as far as the systems are concerned, would be similar to what the president of China, Deng Xiaoping, once stated, that comes a time when a nation has to make certain choices, which is that it doesn't matter what is the color of the eyes and the cat. The most critical part is whether the cat is going to be able to catch the mice. And off quote. And I think this is where we are, that choices about the electoral system that we are going to see emerging should ultimately be evaluated and judged on the basis as to whether it's going to deliver an improvement in our society as the systems are supposed to be. So in those few words, I would like to thank you, Chairperson, for the indulgence, and thank my colleagues and thank the CEO for the excellent exposition that he shared with yourselves, and we would be then available going forward to support the work of the committee. I thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I see also quoting, so the books behind you, I can see they're not just there for other reasons, but you really read them. I see you quote a scholar, GGP. I would like to, on behalf of the committee, thank you, Mr. Chairperson, and the other commissioners that are always present, the deputy chair, and the CEO, and the deputy CEOs. I think as the committee, we don't take very light the contribution you do to the committee. And we'd like to thank you very much for the eye-opening presentation. We will, as a committee, we note this report. We will, as I said when I was opening, that the executive has a lot of a role to play. But as the Committee of Parliament and Parliament, we're not going to waiting for that process. When that process comes, it must find us well equipped to can deal with the process that will be brought to us by the executive. So this is the first step also towards ensuring that we start this long journey. Because as you can here, when members are contributing, is not a simple matter. And I agree with Honorable Giant that we may look at it for young. We'll also have to look at the other presentation, political parties and so on. We just want to make sure that we move in one gear as all members of the committee and take along Parliament, so that when the executive comes to present, we are able to be clear on what we want to do. Because this will also involve, Honorable Minister, a serious conversation with the electorate. So it's not just we change the law, then we're done. But there must be a serious conversation of taking the electorate along to understand what regime are we trying to put in, what are the changes, what do they mean to the majority of the people? Because what I said earlier, that the regime that we've chosen in 1994, in the main, our forebears were looking at the creation of a non-racial, non-sexist, democratic, united, and a prosperous country. And our constitution does also say very clearly that ours will be a multi-party. It will not be like all these that they've already presented. Ours will be a multi-party. So if others want to change that, I think we must give it to parties, we must give it to civil society, business, and to electorate to have a proper conversation and allow enough time for a proper conversation so that we are able to come up with a long-lasting solution to deal with the elections in the country. So we will be inviting a number of, because IEC, sometimes we'll invite you just to listen, not to comment or just to listen, because at the end, you are the one who are supposed to deal with this matter. So if you're listening and following the conversation, it will be very important for the whole process itself. So we're stepping to the next item, and we are granted indulgence. You can leave the meeting. The minister and the team and the chairperson and the team, we are indulged. You can leave the meeting. We want to deal with now committee housekeeping related issues. And thank you once more, Minister, for making your time, and your deputy minister. And thank you, Chairperson, and the other commissioners. Can we now, members, go to the next committee?
Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Goodbye. Wishing you well.
Thank you, Chair. Bye.
Thank you. DM, let's go.
No, please.
Thank you, members. Last week, there was a letter circulated that seeks concurrence from the president, and members requested that we don't deal with that item last week. We push it forward to today with a view that members were going to read thoroughly. So I note hence that want to speak to concurring with the president on that letter. Honorable Chabane.
We concur, Chair, with the president's letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another person who wants to say something? Other than that, I think we grant concurrence. Everyone has read the letter sufficient. I gave enough time.
Chair?
Honorable Ross?
Chair, yeah, just to confirm, the Democratic Alliance supports the recommendation.
Okay.
Chairperson, this is Adam Salmon here. If I can just indicate briefly that the report is retrospective. It's referring to the last year it's not going forward. So they were supposed to have done the report by April, but it's been postponed, obviously, because of COVID. So it's a retrospective recommendation, but there will be something similar coming our way in the future if they've set the precedent, just to indicate that.
The Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs concurs with the letter. The next item on my agenda is
Chairperson?
Yes.
Yeah, there was a report that was circulated. If we can adopt it, since we have concurred with the recommendation of the president, so that we can ATC it.
I'm speaking to that recommendations and the letter that we did. Is that what we are concurring with? What do you want us to do?
Yeah.
Now?
If we can get a member to move for the adoption of that report and a seconder for the report, then we are done.
Honorable Chabane, Honorable Ross seconded.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Chair.
No increase.
Yeah, agreed to.
Okay, all right. So it's fine.
It's gonna rain. It's gonna rain.
Go to the. Can we go to the?
It's raining already.
Oversight report on government printing works. It was then last week, members. It is here today. I take it. We have read the report. About this report, Honorable Janji.
Agreed.
Agreed. Any seconder? Honorable Ross.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to disappoint. We were almost getting on a roll there of agreeing. Chair, it's just interesting that we have a report coming from this oversight meeting. We've had several other oversight meetings where there's been no such report. So, for example, Ndela, or the issue of the court cases. So I'm just wondering, are those reports also coming? And then secondly, from the DA's point of view, I don't understand what that really was all about. I mean, it says in this report that the committee recommended that Nahawa's views were heard. That's nowhere in the minutes. Nobody spoke about that. And I don't know if it was a commission of inquiry or fact-finding or what. And the reason that the Democratic Alliance didn't take part is that we were advised that could potentially influence the process. And so the DA's position remains that number one, we asked for the Hawks, the terms of reference, to satisfy ourselves that all the allegations that were placed against Ms. Fozzi were being investigated. And then number two, that there is the opportunity to cross-examine the report that we saw from the PSC in that regard. So this report, whatever it was, it doesn't change our recommendations and our position.
Okay, there was a second. I'm looking for a second of what Honorable Janji. Then I take this one as an objection. And any second, Honorable Chabane?
Yes, Chair. We second the report. We'll wait for when you call for discussions.
Okay. And I did the report, Chairperson.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Honorable Muela. It will go to the House. The report is accepted, but Honorable Rose raises very important AG. We went to Lindela. We need that report to come here. We went to the department about what the judge in the Western Cape requested us to do. We need that report to also come here because we need to then debate to the House. I take the objection of Honorable Rose. I think you'll raise it when we table it into the House. The next item is it's minutes. It's minutes of our meetings. I have requested. I have Honorable Magruva.
Yeah, Chair, the issue of other reports not being prioritized similar to this one, is it possible on your request that we put a time frame on the other reports to be submitted for adoption for the committee?
Okay, thank you. I think in our next meeting, because we started with those kind of oversight before this one. In our next meeting, Eddie, can we get these reports, please? Now we're doing minutes, members. They've been sent to you timelessly. They are here on my system. I may not go in a chronological order, but we will start taking minutes of the 4th of February. Page 1.
Oh, jeez.
Page 2. Page 3. Can we move for adoption?
Chairperson?
You are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I think there's an important commitment from that report that is not in this report, in that the Minister committed to resolve the RAB backlog in the next 4 years. So I think it's a significant commitment that he made to the committee, and it should be minuted and tracked to see the progress against that commitment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Adoption? With that
Chair, I
amendment.
move for the adoption with the amendment, Chair.
Seconder, Lekhwase.
I second the mover, Chair.
Thank you. Which date is the next? Eddie? Eddie?
I email you a list in terms of
Yes,
from
yes.
the, yeah.
No, my system is no longer. Can you start from that second? Let's go down. Call the date of the date. Then we do it because my system is.
Chair, you
sending me out.
You started with the minutes of the 4th, if I'm correct. Where the minutes of the 29th November 2019.
Yeah, I was saying it must call them chronologically because he has them there, so that we dispose them chronologically. Let's take the 29th November. Any issues on the minutes of the 29th November, members? Rose? Unmute.
Yeah, Chair, I don't have a note on it, so I imagine everything's in order.
Yes, can we move for adoption?
The 26th of the 11th.
Yeah, the minutes of the 26th.
Okay. Chair Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, Chair. So in the minutes, we spoke about that the committee should meet with the unions on the issue of Home Affairs reopening on the weekends. And I just suggested we actually do something about that because it's been about 6 months ago that we made that recommendation, which was a resolution of the committee that we actually called the union and Home Affairs to discuss the reopening on Saturdays. But apart from that, there's no other correction.
Okay.
Chair. Hello, Chairperson.
Yes, get in.
Yeah, no, I'm in, Chairperson. No, I just want to advise my chair. Because I'm going to be moving to this committee very soon. You know what? I advise the other committees, of which I found it very odd that we need chairman to have a resolution tracker, taking all the actions on the minutes that were there, so that you don't lose a track of the deliberation and the actions that have been captured onto the meeting itself. And well, look, I'm quite probably new on this committee, but it's when you're having minutes, Chair, of last year in November, it actually says that what is the purpose of us meeting. So if, let's say, Chair, you can actually have a resolution tracker after each and every meeting that you are having a portfolio committee meeting, then you can just go through in terms of the things that were supposed to be done, how far are they, and all of that. It's an advice. I think now that the guys from the public works are starting to actually do it. They started to establish a resolution tracker now, so they can see what action that needed to be done for the committee itself. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mkini. I think it's we welcome that advice. We need to do this resolution track.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of things that we need to deal with. There are a lot of things that we have resolved on. We have not acted upon those kinds of issues. So we need to have a space of our resolutions so that we can form agenda item on the basis of the resolutions we have already taken.
Yeah.
Is that understood?
Okay, yeah, it's understood.
What is the next stage, meeting of the next stage?
Meeting of the 18th of February 2020, where the committee was deliberating and consideration of the proposed amendments on the BMA and briefing by the department on the second and third quarter performance expenditure report, and the briefing by the content advisor on SONA, on the impact of SONA on the work of the committee. Then there were 7 pages in that 7 pages.
You know, why I'm running the way I'm running is we're supposed to deal with this last week, and I had requested members to thoroughly look into them so that we have the space, so that today we don't have a lot of time dealing with the minutes. So I take it that if we call the date, members must have noted it on this one. So we'll not go page 1 to page 7 for that specific reason. So what is the date? Is of members adopting that set of minutes?
Yes, Chair, we'll move for the adoption.
And I second, Honorable Chair, as I was part of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Bella.
And then the next one is the 3rd of.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Chair.
Yes, Honorable Ross.
There's just an amendment needed on Resolution 6.1. So where it says they had other issues with the bill, it should read they rejected the bill. So the exact wording there.
All right.
No.
Because we supported the amendment, but we reject the bill.
I think they welcomed the bill and they rejected it in plenary, in a debate. In fact, Honorable was the one who moved and appreciating the work of the NCOP on the amendment of the bill. I'm not saying he must change his mind, but I'm saying he has welcomed the process, the work of the bill and the minister, and in plenary. But I'm just saying, I'm reminding him on what he has said. I seconded on his.
No, it's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, seconded. The next set of minutes.
Is the next set of minutes the 3rd of March, Chairperson?
3rd of March.
Yes, the 3rd of March.
Honorable Muela. Honorable Janji. Honorable Chavane.
Put the minutes for adoption.
Adoption. Seconder. Honorable Ross. Say it on record, Honorable Ross. No, get on record.
I second,
Get
Chair.
on record. Say it on record.
I second the adoption, Chair.
Yes. Okay. Chair, then the next one is the 10th of March.
Chairperson.
Is the minutes of the 10th of March, Chair?
Chairperson.
The minutes of March, Honorable Magruba.
Yeah, Chair, I just want you to assure us that we are still a quorum, because I see you are looking for adoption, and it seems that members has left this meeting.
We are here on
I apologize.
Yeah. We are here.
And we're seconding for your move, Makluba.
No, Honorable Makluba is not.
Did you move? I'm moving, Honorable Makluba. Honorable Muela.
Yes, Chair. Agreed.
Sorry, Chair, just one amendment.
Yes, Honorable Ross.
Chair, on the last page, it says the only other option is deportation to the country of origin, and which is incorrect to say, because we discussed that the option of deportation, it was discussed, but there was disagreement. So the agreement was actually that it would be revisited once the parties had reported back. So there was a suggestion of the deportation was the only option, but there was disagreement. And the
there was no disagreement.
be revisited.
No, Chair, can you come in?
Honorable Chavane.
Chair, that meeting was clear on its position, given the status of action they've taken, those our brothers. In the resolve of the meeting, there are two options that they were to take: is deportation or integration. In fact, no, it's integration into the community. Failure to that, for them to respond to that call, is deportation. There was anonymous agreement on that matter with the Human Rights Commission. If you can go back to the records, you will find that resolve of that commission.
Yes, no, I agree with you. I agree with Chavane. There were no disagreements on that. I know.
There was, Chair. I'll get the hand card.
Huh? No, there was no disagreement. But if you want to disagree now, like I saw your article later on that you wrote, that was showing you have some slight disagreement. But for the purposes of minutes, we'll capture it as it is. Thank you. I'm looking for a seconder. Honorable Budisa.
I second, Chair.
Seconder, the next set of minutes.
The next set of minutes, 7 May. 7 May 2020, where we received the briefing by the department on the APP and the strat plan.
Chairperson, I will move the adoption of this set of minutes. It's lethal.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Any second?
Into the adoption.
Unmute.
I said I seconded the adoption.
Thank you, Veteran Dakota.
The next set of minutes is 11 May, where the committee received briefing from the IEC and government printing works on their APP and strat plans.
Chair, I will move for the adoption.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Any seconder?
Seconded, Chairperson.
Honorable Mwela seconds the.
Thank you. Another set of minutes?
19 May, where the committee received a briefing on the rollout of the one-stop border post, asylum seeker processing facilities, rollout of the enhanced biometric movement control system, and yeah.
Hence,
Honorable Mwela moves for adoption.
I will second, Chairperson. I second the adoption.
Thank you, Co-Chair. The next set of minutes, Eddie?
Is 29 May, where the committee received briefing on the repositioning of the department and the adoption of the budget vote report.
Any hand for adoption?
Chair, I move to adopt.
Honorable Green, you're not there. You can't.
No, it was Honorable Ross. It was Honorable Ross who moved.
You move. Seconder?
I second, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Next set of minutes, Eddie.
Is 2 June, where the committee received the briefing on the allegations against corruption against the acting CEO of Government Printing Works by the Parliament Legal Services and the Minister of Home Affairs, and briefing on the ABs and VFS.
Adoption, members?
I was part of the meeting, Honorable Chair, and I move that we adopt the minutes Honorable Mwela proposes. Thank you.
Just a question.
Seconding, Chairperson.
Chairperson, I want to ask a question.
Yes.
The letter, was it addressed to the committee or was it to the chairperson?
Which letter?
The letter of the minutes. It is said approval of a letter submitted to the committee. It was a letter submitted to the chairperson, not to the committee.
Where are you, Honorable Makluba?
Page.
I'm in the meeting.
No, sorry, man. I'm saying the page.
The page.
Which letter are you referring to, Comrade Matuba?
Yeah, that is the problem. But be that as it may, if a letter is referred to the chairperson, it is for all intent and purposes referred to the committee. So there is no two ways about it. Once the letter is referred to the chair, it is referred to the chair on behalf of the committee. So I don't see any problem with that. Is my understanding correct, members?
Yes. Very correct.
Yes.
Yes, so then Honorable Mwala move for adoption. Honorable Chabane seconded. We're moving. Another set of minutes, Honorable, not Honorable Eddie.
Okay, 9 June, where the committee received briefing from the department on the fourth quarter and expenditure report.
Adoption.
We move for the adoption, Chair.
Honorable Chabane moves seconder.
Myself and Honorable Ross will second, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. Another set of minutes.
The other set of minutes is 25 June, where the committee received briefing on the Constitutional Court ruling on the issue of the independence, the one that we just dealt with today.
Members?
Chairperson, I will move for the adoption of the
Thank you, Co-Chair. Seconder?
Second.
Co-Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Veteran Likota.
Yes, seconder,
Next,
Co-Chair.
Thank you.
Then the last one is 7 July, where we received, the committee received briefing from the department IEC GPW on their adjusted budgets.
Yes, mainly we're debating about that tomorrow. Any adoption?
Yeah, Chairperson, I will move for the adoption.
Thank you, Co-Chair.
Okay.
I want to second the Co-Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Chabane.
That's all, Chairperson.
Thank you, colleagues. We have now adopted all the minutes. I would like to bring to your attention that we have dealt with the Border Management Authority bill. What I want to say to you today is that that bill is an act now of Parliament. The President has assented to it some 2 days ago. It is an act of Parliament. We would like to thank you for all the work that we have put as members of the committee in ensuring that we pass that piece of legislation. And tomorrow, it's a budget debate, members.
Welcome back to my channel, and if you are new here, I am so happy that you found me. My name is
Eddie, can you mute? Not only mute, can you take that member who's causing the problem out of this meeting? Tomorrow is a budget vote. We're debating vote number 5 at 4 o'clock. I'm sure members are quite ready. We'll be talking about the adjustments that are there. I hope everyone is ready. I think before we close the meeting, I would like to thank you, members, all of you, for your constructive inputs that you have brought to this meeting today. I think our meeting was one of the best meetings that we've had today. We are busy trying to finalize the third quarter program. I'm sure the management committee will deal with some of the issues that arises from that. But now that Honorable Mgrini suggested this tracker for our resolutions, we'll have to look at those resolutions and check what are the issues that are outstanding. And that will be a basis of what we must begin to discuss in the third quarter. And other than that, I would like to declare this meeting officially closed. Thank you very much, members.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye-bye, Chair. See you tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Honorable Lizelle.
Bye, Coach.
Bye, Shabane.
So, Honorable